To another episode of Life and Equity, where I talk about life and life experience and about equity regarding finances. Today, I want to talk about love and relationships. Going through the cancer uh, that I did in 2014, and I experienced a lot of things regarding because I spent a lot of time near death, very near death, and so I learned a lot. I gained a completely different perspective about life and death, about what's important, obviously. You gain a different perspective when you're faced with something like that. Um, and I learned what unconditional love is and what it isn't. And unconditional love is loving without judgment. That includes judgment for one's self. Because if you judge yourself, you're still in judgment. So unconditional love is loving unconditionally, meaning you love somebody, you love them for where they're at. It doesn't mean you agree with or love what people do. It doesn't even mean you agree with or love what you do all the time. But it means you love yourself unconditionally, meaning there is no judgment. And here's another thing. A lot of people say, "Oh, I love out here. I love these people. I love unconditionally." I've heard this. I love unconditionally, but I'm critical of myself. That's not true. That is not true. If you're critical of yourself, you're critical of others. You are still in judgment. You're in judgment of yourself, you're in judgment of others. It's not possible to pour from an empty cup. What your cup is full of is what you can pour with, and that's it. So if you love yourself, if you're feeding yourself love, you can also feed others love. If you're feeding yourself criticism, whether you believe it or not, you're also critical of others. That's just how it is. So let's talk about relationships. Unconditional love is very different than an unconditional relationship. As an example, I love everybody. I love everybody for who they are. I love everybody for where they're at in life. And I have no judgment of that. People are making choices, and that's why they're in the situation that they're in, or living the life that they're living, whether they're millionaires or billionaires, or whether they're living on the street. It's because of their choices, because of the choices that they chose to have experiences that they wanted to experience. And we can get into the weeds on that in a different conversation. But for today, we're going to say there is no judgment on where people are at in life. There's no judgment on where I'm at in life. That's unconditional love. Everybody's just doing the best that they can with what they've currently got, whether it's mentally, physically, financially, everybody's just doing the best that they can, or in general, they're doing the best that they can. And I love them for where they're at in life. And it doesn't mean I want to be in a relationship with all of those individuals. That's very different. Being in a relationship with somebody is very different. And what type of relationship? In reality, we're all humans, and we are all in relationship with every other human on the planet to some degree. May not be interaction, but we're in relationship. And what one person does affects the entirety of humanity because we're all part of one human body or one body of humanity. Let's put it that way. And so what one human does affects another, even if it's on the other side of the planet. Now, depending on what they're doing and how many people, the effect it has, it can affect people. It can affect people in a drastic manner. Let's say somebody goes to war, blows people up. Well, that's going to affect everybody in a far more substantial way than if you're just, walking into the store and buying groceries. But everything that we do affects every other human. Again, I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want now the type of relationship is very different than unconditional love. So again, you can love somebody, you can love them unconditionally, does not mean you want to be in an intimate relationship. As an example, I'm married. I have a very specific relationship with my wife, and I don't want that with any other human being. I have a relationship with my kids, and that's different than other family members. It's different than neighbors. It's a different kind of relationship. I love everybody, but the relationship is different. So having unconditional love does not mean you condone actions. It does not mean you're in an unconditional relationship or even that you would let those individuals into your house. There are people who I wouldn't want in my house. I wouldn't want them around my family. I wouldn't want them around my kids. I wouldn't trust them with my grandkids. It doesn't mean I don't love them. So there is a difference between unconditional love and unconditional relationships. And relationships are always conditional. Again, the conditions of my wife and I's relationship is that we are married. And that's a very different relationship than with my kids, with the neighbors, or with the stranger down the street, or people I've never met. Very different relationships. So just some thoughts. You can certainly have unconditional love. And again, unconditional love starts with yourself. You cannot have unconditional love for someone else until you have unconditional love for yourself. And having unconditional love for somebody is very different than being than the type of relationship that you have for them. Here's another example. Divorced people are still in relationship with their ex-spouse, typically, especially if there's kids involved. They're going to be in relationship their entire life. Does not mean they love them as a spouse anymore because they're separated, they're divorced. That relationship changed. It does, and you can still love and respect each other. And a lot of people get along better separated than they ever, they make better friends than they ever made spouses. So the relationship changed. They can still love each other. They can still respect each other. And ideally they will, because that's a lot easier, especially if there are kids involved. But it's not an unconditional relationship. So relationships are always conditional, and but love doesn't have to be. Just some thoughts. Hope this is beneficial. Please like and subscribe. And if you like the content, please comment and let me know what you like and what you'd like to see more of. I'm happy to do that.